So, welcome to this edition of 22nd Century Management with Ken. I'm privileged to have with me Dr. Bob Nelson. He is the president of Nelson Motivation. He's the world's leading authority on employee recognition and engagement, and he's worked with 80% of the Fortune 500 companies. He is a senior fellow for the Conference Board, a top thought leader for the Best Practices Institute, and was named a top 5 management guru by the Global Gurus. So that sounds really amazing. Dr. Bob, you want to tell us a little more?
Well, thank you, Ken. I've been blessed on my journey and have worked with some greats in management. Got my PhD working with Dr. Peter Drucker at the Drucker Management Center and at the Claremont Graduate Schools, and worked with Ken Blanchard for 10 years as helping him write books and being an administrator for his company. And currently I'm a coach for Marshall Goldsmith, who's ranked the number one executive coach in the world. So I've been blessed to have worked with and learned from some of the greats.
Well, that's very nice. It is amazing when you hang around smart people, how much it does for you. That's why I have this podcast, so I can hang around for a few minutes with smart people and learn something. For everybody that's wondering about my background, I am on a cruise ship in Cozumel, Mexico. Costa Maya, Mexico. I was Cozumel yesterday. So we're in my cabin, so my background is not very much, but it is what it is.
Very good reception. That's great.
Yeah, it's worked well this week.
So are you in port now, or are you cruising?
No, we're in port, but it was good even when we were cruising. But yeah, I'm in port. I'm trying to keep the show regular, and I have a cruise this week. I have a cruise next week. So assuming that the internet holds up, I'll be live here.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about this kind of a business is you can be gone somewhere and still do what you need to do.
Exactly.
So, we've had a lot of transition and a lot of challenges in business lately. And so, we see a lot of businesses are really, they want to get back to normal, but I guess one of the questions I would have is, because you talk about the fact that the best way to do it is to have more fun. And that does not seem rational. It seems like that we have to have more business, not more fun.
Well, yes, and I'm not going to argue with that, but it's sort of, fun's got to be part of the mix. And especially in that employees that worked from home, they've been isolated for a year and a half and stressed. Everyone is stressed. That fun is one of the top stress releases. And if you basically are having more fun what you're doing and who you're doing it with and who you're serving, you're going to enjoy your job a lot more. And so we have a lot of employees. 71% of the workforce worked from home, and of those, 65% want to continue working from home, and 58% say that they will quit if forced to come into the office. I think we've demonstrated that working remotely works, and people are actually more productive, and not even counting the savings and commute time, which most people feel is a waste of both time and money. So I think, if you want people to come back, give more meaning to their job, and part of that's enjoyment. So it's not fun just for fun's sake and just to be silly. It's fun to enjoy what we're doing with our waking hours. And all my books are research based, and in this one, Work Made Fun Gets Done, we looked at the companies on the best places to work list that Fortune publishes every year. And out of those 100 top companies, one of the variables they asked about was how much fun it is to work in your place. And 82% actually said that they work in a fun work environment at the 100 best places to work in America. And when you contrast that with the other companies that applied to be on that list but didn't make it, it was only 60% that said that they work in a fun work environment. So that on that one dimension, there's a 20-point spread, and that was actually one of the most significant of all the variables that they look at. So it kind of speaks to, that's working for them. Is it working for you? And that's what we tried to show, that it can work for you. And here's exactly what people are doing to make it a more fun job, both in how people do their job and ways you can make that more fun. And then if you're part of a group, a team, which most people are, how you can bring more fun to that and to your meetings. And then as an organization, what things you can do to make fun as part of your culture. So it's the work's important, and it's got to start with that. But you know, thanking people for doing a good job is simple to do at no cost, and it's very meaningful. 85% of employees today say they feel they're overworked and underappreciated. So just thanking people for the job you're already paying them for is an important thing to do. Only 12% of employees today say they feel recognized in ways that are meaningful to them. And when it comes down to it, most everyone wants to have meaning in their lives. And the biggest part of that is our work. And so they want to be part of something larger than themselves, where they feel that they're a significant contributor and they're valued for doing that. So that's a pretty simple place to start. Or likewise, when the team finishes a task or a new goal or installation of a new software platform, whatever it might be, taking time to celebrate is not frivolous. It's a chance to regroup and to reflect on what we did, what learnings we have, and to have some fun then, to do a team building activity or bring in some food. Again, not hard to do. And I just, with the book, just trying to make the case that this has got to be part of the mix. It can't be, okay, now we're all behind, so we got to work 3 times as hard, because that leads to burnout, and that leads to people quitting, which is what we're seeing. The great resignation. Some 12 million employees have quit their jobs in the last 3 or 4 months, and it's expected to be up to 25% of the workforce by the end of the year. So if you want to bring people back to work, if you want to have them feel valued, if you want them to work hard, you have to thank them for what they've done. It's probably the most proven principle of management. You get what you reward, what you recognize, you'll get more of. And what gets recognized gets repeated. So I guess I'm trying to point out some simple, proven principles that might have got lost in the shuffle during the crisis of the pandemic and the supply chain interruptions and whatnot, and now strikes. So employees are dissatisfied, and there's a lot you can do to help make for a more meaningful work experience. And certainly, it's not just about the money. Money is the contract for what they do, but what they getting their best effort, and having them want to be doing what they're doing and who they're doing it with and who they're serving as a client. That is something that any company of any size can impact in a very real way. And that's what I'm all about, trying to show them how to do that.
Okay, thank you. And I agree so much with that. One of the things I teach in my service management class is I show service managers, we talk about ways to acknowledge what somebody's done, whether it's their employees or whether it is somebody that around them that has done something that's made a difference.
Yes.
I think that your point about gratitude is so important. And I give them the very simplest suggestion that I use is that if somebody from outside your department has done something good, you send them an email saying thank you, and you copy everybody up the management chain above them.
Yeah. For example,
because it's that's just a very simple little thing that they can do. But the email that says thank you is okay. It's not bad, but it doesn't have nearly the impact if you've told everybody above them in the hierarchy, or that somebody that they would be in their chain of command, that they've done a good job. That feels really good. And it's going to be,
yeah.
Well, I want a little more of that.
And then if their manager then adds on and makes a comment or mentions the management team, that type of thing, it's easy to expand on recognition that's done, to build off it in simple ways. I worked with Hewlett-Packard, and they had, I remember a story there. They had a senior software engineer burst into his manager's office one day and said, "You won't believe it. I fixed a software bug. I've been working on it for weeks." And his manager, knowing the importance of a time of the recognition, wanted to do something then and there, not the end of the month or end of the quarter, end of the year. That's ancient history in any fast-moving organization. You got to capture the moment in the moment. So this guy literally gropes around his desk, hands the senior software engineer a banana from his lunch with the words, "I knew you could do it." Now, as simple and frivolous as that is, it wasn't frivolous to the person he gave it to. He showed everyone the banana the boss gave him and why it took on a life, a story. Today in that division in Hewlett-Packard, Sunnyvale, California, 17 years later, the most prestigious award for technical excellence is the Golden Banana Award. So they started with something and then they built on it. In fact, whoever gets that award, they give them a little lapel pin of a banana to wear in their name tag. So at a glance, people can tell that they're part of this exclusive club. So it's fun, it's silly, but it's also very, very powerful. In that case, in driving the commitment and focus on their highly paid technical staff.
Well, and it's interesting because, and I talk about this in the service management class. In fact, one of the books that's required reading is the 1 Minute Manager, written by Ken Blanchard. Yeah, but I talk to them about the concept of look for what somebody's doing good. We're also conditioned to look for the negative in people.
Yes.
We do it to our kids, we do it to our spouses, we do it to our employees. And we find the negatives, and then that's what we talk about. And it's really a paradigm shift when you start looking for, recognizing, and especially doing so in the very near term, the positive things that somebody's done, because they then start to want more of that pat on the back. They're like, "Oh, that's so nice. I want a little more of it." At least that's my perception.
You're absolutely right. And even if they're, I'm married to a computer scientist, and she's very skilled and knowledgeable and very independent, but she notices when she does a great project and for a client and no one says something back, she feels slighted, and it doesn't take much, but it's got to be something to say, just at a practical level, I saw what you did. I appreciate it. Here's how it's really going to help us, and thank you so much for doing that. So that's kind of where it starts. Very simple recognition, and every manager should be doing that in their sphere of influence. Then of course you could have, if you set it up in a company where people could thank each other, then you get more of it going on. And that's also powerful, to get a thanks from someone that maybe knows even better what you're up against, because they sit next to you and they're talking all the time. Involving upper management ideally goes a long way as well.
Okay. Yeah.
In fact, even the customer, I've worked with the company where they would go to their customers and they'd ask them for recommendations from their employees that they feel have been most helpful to them, and then they would bring that customer in to give the award to the person. It was can't remember what they called it, but it was Unsung Heroes Award. That's what it was, and it was very powerful when the customer comes in and says, "When I call your company, I look to talk to Jerry or to Sally." It's like there's the that sends a big message. This is the person that's keeping us in business and keeping our customers satisfied. And if you can help this person, do so, because they're doing good things for all of us. That's very powerful, just to be creative in how you can make that happen.
Well, and I like the example you gave there, because you can do some things that are, I don't want to call them whimsical, but amusing, but that are at the same time provide positive reinforcement. The Golden Banana Award is a good example of that. So let me ask, because it seems to be that things are shifting in the workforce. And so what do you think has fueled the shift in employee expectations? Because it seems like that's what people expect now, whereas we go back, and I think about generationally, we go back to the early baby boomers, or the people that may have come out of World War II. I don't think that was as important to them as it is now. What do you think about that?
I agree with that. Well, one of the biggest shifts is just sort of the age of employees. Now it's almost 2/3 of all employees are from the millennial generation. So this is a generation that was brought up on praise, and everyone got a trophy in soccer, no matter how many games we won. No one was left out, and so they have a great expectation to be thanked and acknowledged and praised. So they grew up with it a little bit more. And in fact, someone told me that defined a millennial that is really they view work as college plus a paycheck. So they want to have the freedom they had in college and follow their interest and do what they love and make a difference, but to be paid as well. So I think that's a very different than as you mentioned our parents and generation where they had more of a loyalty to the company. The average turnover of a millennial right now is about 18 months. So if they're going to stick around, you better show a path for them I mean the first conversation to say, hey, you met so and so. Yeah, they started in the same job that you've got, and now they're a vice president or director or something. And so job one is you got to always do quality work. And if you do, it's be part of my job to help you get ready for the next thing you want to go in your career. And have you given any thought to that? Because that's part of my job is to help you move in that direction. Wow, that's a very different than a boss that's just going to bark orders at you and tell you what to do. So you've got to show. I believe the manager's got to show that they're on the employee's side of having their best interest at heart. And if they show that through their actions, that's going to send a huge message that will lead to the person wanting to work for that manager and staying around longer. If you create a culture of recognition in your organization where we do this as a matter of course, everyone does things in terms of thinking, we're positive, we're focused on when we do make mistakes and those happen, we focus on the learnings, that type of thing. You end up with a population that feels 5 times more likely to feel valued, six times more likely to tell their friends and relatives what a great place they work, and kind of positive PR for the company, 7 times more likely to stay in the organization for ideally the rest of their career, and 11 times more committed to their jobs, their manager, the mission of the organization. So some huge benefits just from doing this simple activity in a consistent, sincere manner, and timely as well. It's got to be, like I said, capturing the moment in the moment. It's not the days of the end of the year, we're going to give out a couple trophies to top performing employees is over. You can still do that, but if you're not doing it along the way, there's the people who get the trophies at the end of the year celebration are 0.5% or a couple people. You got to move the middle. So you got to move every person, every job. If they each are doing their job a little bit better, we're gonna have a huge aggregate effect of being more competitive. And so so a lot of companies, if they have the end of the year awards or they do years of service acknowledgments, or that's fine, but it's not enough. It's and then it really gets to me that a lot of our organizations, again, kind of an old line impact is that they do something for people's birthdays and even years of service awards. You've been here 5 years or 10 years. Is that really what you want to celebrate? Just how long they've been there or what they did, And some of the strong advocate, you got to, if you want better performance, you got to recognize performers and performance and not just presence. You've been here 5 years, so here's an award. It's like, wow, how. To me, it's that we've been out of sync with that, and part of it because that's where it started, and actually, truth be known, a lot of recognition in companies started with vendors selling stuff. If you're selling, a lot of the largest vendors today in that space were initially, Merritt's initially sold watches, and if you it's one thing to sell, one watch, but if you could sell a whole company 100 watches for 10-year anniversaries, that's going to be a bigger sale. So that kind of is the start of the incentive industry. It was all started out of more programmatic type years of service, which 92% of the organizations have today. So it's okay to have that, but if that's all you have, that and a holiday party and a Christmas party, it's like you're missing the boat. you gotta get down to the nitty gritty of the relationships between every manager and the people that they work with, and what that connection is to get the most from them.
It's interesting. You laid out a lot of really great points there. A couple of them I want to come back and revisit. One of the things in the service management class we talk about is the fact that millennials don't say, and I use this, I said, the one thing you don't want to do if you're thinking about hiring a millennial or any of the younger generations, because now millennials are, starting to be mainstream, and there's some of the newer generations are coming. Said you don't walk in and take them back in the back and show them Bob, who's been a technician for 40 years, and tell them that. Because if you don't have a lock on the door, they're gone, because they don't want to be, in the same place 40 years from now they are today. They want to go up and have this sense that there is some opportunity that exists within the company.
Yeah, and excitement about what they're doing, and especially if you do that, and they have got a buddy that's joined a company that has a new app, and they're doubling in size every quarter, then that's where the person's going to go. Maybe join with which much more exciting, and so yeah, and that's not to take anything away from the person that's been there 40 years, because. But as we're talking, it's sort of like they had a different set of priorities, and maybe they wanted that security, and they wanted to be able to know that their mortgage is paid, every month, and they can put their kids through college and live a standard of living which they're accustomed. So today's generations, that hope is a little bit more in question. In fact, we constantly have discussions about how the next generation is not going to have the every generation wants their kids to be more successful than they were, and that maybe that's not going to happen this go around, and it's almost impossible to buy a house now. I'm in California. It's like, and on and on. The cost of living is significant, and people, if they've got $60 or $100 or $200,000 in college debt, they're not focused on settling down. They're kind of be a slave to paying off their student debt for quite a while, and all that takes a toll on their sense of security. And so people are putting off getting married. They're putting off buying a home. Even the price of cars and used cars have skyrocketed in the last year because of a shortage. And so we're in a different era on a lot of different fronts, and I think for someone to be, it's not uncommon for a younger person to say, what does it really take to be successful, and to make the money they want to support the lifestyle that they're accustomed to. And it may be that the tried and true paths of the past are not as effective. I'll give you a case in point close to home. My son was a gifted, very talented in the arts, and he played piano, and then he played classical guitar, and he actually, and we encouraged it, and he actually went to Northwestern School of Music. Very, very talented. He did very well. He's won guitar competitions, and yet when he went to graduate school at USC in classical guitar, and he really went there to answer a question: could he make a living doing this? and he would be happy as a clam to be at a small, liberal arts school in the Midwest teaching classical guitar and music theory to students. But wasn't meant to be, and it is. So he actually made a living for a while playing for weddings for $150, and he was creative, and he did Skype lessons with people around the world because to learn the skill you've got to have coaching on it, and so he had some success, and so he realized he could make a living, but it was not going to be easy. It was going to be a constant struggle. It's not, and the classical guitar isn't an orchestra instrument, so you got that whole you don't have that possibility. So, he sized it up and said, I gotta pivot and retool. And so he went to a boot camp for programming in San Francisco called Hack Reactors, that Forbes magazine advertised as 3 months to 6 figures. And sure enough, he did this 3-month program. He graduated. He got 8 job offers, and now he's well along into a career. He's a manager in computer programming, which has a lot of parallels with music. Actually, you got to be it's very linear, but you got to be creative as well. So if you step back from that, and so his education at Northwestern, an elite top school, 4-year education was $200,000, and he was doing gigs for $150, and scrambling all the time, and then he went to a program that was an immersive training in the latest programming languages, taking people from all walks of life. He was a guitarist. They had school teachers. They had medical doctors. They had across the whole gamut. They had one common element. They each wanted to learn a skill set that would take them into this a security in their lives in a high demand area. And so that program cost $17,000. He got 8 job offers from $85,000 to $135,000. And they worked, and then he was in the driver's seat to pick where the best match was with his values. He worked for a company that did farm to home delivery. He worked in programming. He was promoted several times, and then ran the programming department. And then he's recently pivoted again, and now he's working for a cyber currency related job. It's 100% virtual, 100%. There's no office, and he's making $220,000 plus stock option. It's sort of like the job that he's doing didn't exist 5 years ago, let alone 20 years ago, and the company he's working for is quadrupling in size every quarter. So it's a whole new world, and I'm glad he's on the freight train in that direction, because he'd still be happy playing guitar, and he still plays guitar, but now it's more just for fun, not in many ways he enjoys it more because he used to have to practice. Everything was for performance, so it's always constant stress. Now he just enjoys it, and he still does some lessons just for fun along the side. So I like to think that's a success story. And my daughter, similarly, she was 5 years younger than him, and she, very ideal. And she went to work for a nonprofit. Initially, it was a nonprofit as an app for millennials to do charity giving, and then she joined another nonprofit, and then a third nonprofit, and she came to realize, and again, it's something I probably could have told her, but it wouldn't have stuck. She had to see it for herself.
No, wouldn't have listened.
Yeah, that basically the life of nonprofits, you're constantly spending time trying to raise money from people, begging money from people that have money, and the ability to do the things that are most impactful, or maybe you could do that better if you get into the mainstream. And so she retooled, and last December she quit her job, and of course, which is always concerning, and I hear another old line thinking, well, you don't want to quit a job before you have another job to go to. That's not how it's done now. They both said no, no. Actually, finding a job takes so much commitment and to research and for computers, you have are given projects to complete as part of the application process, maybe 5 interviews, different levels and group interviews and stuff that you can't do that while you're working somewhere else. You'll fail at both. And so she quit her job last December, and in March she took another job that's not a nonprofit, $100,000 pay increase, and is much more satisfied and doing work that is meaningful. So that's kind of a snapshot of the younger generation right now, that they aren't confined to. And my son, he talked his girlfriend into taking the same computer boot camp over her parents' objections. You haven't been at that job a year yet. It'll look bad on your resume. And finally she said, I don't care, I'm doing it. And she went to the same boot camp in San Francisco. 3 months later, she graduated. The next day she got a job offer from Apple Computer. And she already had another job offer that she wanted to do. And she turned down the offer with Apple. And they said, are you sure this is Apple? She goes, well, the commute's going to be longer. And it was like, okay. It's a different world. It's really a different world. And as much as we want to help the kids, after us, our own kids and others, it's a different reality. And you have to be attuned to the work environment now and what it takes to make a connection and maybe perhaps higher than in the past, that meaning and the fit with the culture is important. That going back to our parents' days, my dad was a trained auto mechanic by Ford Motor, and he the program that he was trained by was a government funded, and the day he finished it, they laid him off, and so it's sort of, he was glad to get, and he instantly got a job from across town from General Motors, but you were glad to get that job, and you worked for a large company like that, you were set for life, and that's not the way it rolls these days.
And I think, actually, let me go back to our original track. I love thinking about the generations and the factors that have shaped the way, because it's not that the kids are necessarily fundamentally different, but it is that the experiences they had growing up and the things they saw that molded their view of the world around them.
Yeah.
The millennials lived through some tough times, and they don't have any trust in companies because they saw what happened with their parents. But
yes, exactly. My next door neighbor worked for IBM for 29 years, and then he was laid off. And so you learn to be, have a loyalty more to yourself over a big company, and to be the driver of your own career, and to constantly be shaping your skill set and resume. So, yeah, I agree completely with you.
Okay, so let's talk about in the book. You outline some ways to make work fun. So we've talked about a couple, but what else can companies and employers do to really make their work environment both fun and productive?
Sure. Well, and again, we've got over 400 real life examples in the book, so it's not us just making stuff up, but it's like here's what they do. So the way we structured it was we have ideas that relate to making your own work more fun, and then things you can do as a leader of a group, and the things you can do as a member of a group, and then what you can do as an organization in general. And so to start with that, the organizational side, like the president of Belmont College in Nashville, he did a year sabbatical to go investigate highly successful companies, and came back and said, sure enough, every company I visited was a culture of fun that was in the air, and people were constantly having fun as they were doing their work. And so he said, we got to have more fun here. We can't be a stodgy educational institution. And so he created a fun committee, and got people on it and said, it's not a money thing. If you need some money, let me know. But what would people like to do, to celebrate, to have fun, to boost morale, to all across the chart. And just like routinely, they did different things. Likewise, I worked in Seattle with the company where they I had someone heard me speak, and speaking to like 800 people in Seattle, and this one person looked familiar, and she goes, "Yeah, I heard you speak about 6 weeks ago," and I left the room. I was inspired to, and I left the room with one thing in mind: I'm going to make this happen. I'm not asking permission. I'm going to start doing the things I talked about to get things going in the area. I said, "Well, what'd you do?" She goes, "Well, I created a happiness committee. It had 5 people on it. No one knew who they were. It was anonymous, but any one of those 5 people could say, it's time to do something." Well, what types of things would they do? Well, we had a picnic up on the roof to celebrate landing a new client, and that was kind of fun. Or we bartered meeting space that we had with the company on the next block over, a limo company that needed meeting space for their staff meetings. And so now they give us free limo rides that we can use to celebrate or pick someone up on a day of celebration. And just on they went. And she had almost instantly a buzz in her department. People were excited. They were having fun, but it was all within the context of getting the work done, and helping each other. And other managers started noticing and say, "What are you doing in your group? Your people are having so much fun. There's so much energy. Well, come to the next meeting. We don't have any secrets here. Let's have a joint meeting." And it got bigger and better. And from that first conversation, when she heard me speak, to fast forward about 18 months later, that company, Perkins Coie, a law firm, entered the best places to work in America, number 23 on the list. And I would contend it was from one person, a manager of the finance department in the middle of the organization. We like to think it all has to start from the top. And so sometimes things happen easier when it starts there, but it doesn't have to start there. In this case, it was a manager in the finance department that really kind of lit the fuse that led to a complete culture change for that organization. And I could roll out 100 examples like that. That.
Well, I was saying, and that's interesting because for the most part, I don't think any of us would think of a law firm as being a fun place to work.
Exactly. So it kind of begs the question: if they could do it, and they're a law firm, and you're a startup company, come on. A lot of small companies say, "Well, we don't have the budget to do a lot of motivation." I go, "What are you talking about? You've got daily visibility with your founders and leadership. You've got you could be flexible. You're not rule bound by a 300-page policy manual. You know how many corporations would like to have that type of flexibility? You got to look at what you do have and work with that, not what you don't have." And I find that to be kind of universal. Companies I work with, they all kind of start with, "Well, we can't do this. We're unionized. We can't do this." Well, wait, back it up there. Invite the union to be part of it. Don't stop pitting them as the enemy and have them be part of it. Oh, okay. Well, we haven't thought of that. So.
Yeah, pretty obvious, but.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's not obvious. You get myopic in how you've always done it, and that's what I like to think that my books and help can be kind of eye opening and maybe to look at the obvious stuff that everyone's looking past. So and that actually is part of the challenge on the soft skill, because people, managers know it's important, and leaders know it's important how people are. People are our most important asset, right? Well, yeah. Are you doing stuff to show that, or are you just assuming that? Well, they must know it because we spend most of our budget on salaries and benefits. It's like, yeah, that's still not it, because you can have those things, and that's what you get for the contract. But how do they feel about working for you? Are they excited to come to work? That's not a policy that's going to get that. It's going to take a personal touch from their individual manager. So that's where you got to bring the focus of control down to each manager in their sphere of influence, and what are they doing to connect with people. And when it comes down to it, people are different. So what you do for one person might be different for someone else. That Jerry's you got to check in with him every 5 weeks, or he starts to feel in, but Sally's she's more independent. I could just, in fact, the way I reward her is to give her more responsibility or give her greater visibility, and wow, it's good job, Sally. Would you like to present these findings to the management team? I'd love to. Okay, I'll set it up for you. So you expand the pool of things you can do instead of narrow it. I couldn't have. That's why I wrote a book called 1,001 Ways to Reward People. It's not just one thing, and it's certainly not just salary and benefits. That's actually pretty stiff, and that's the formal contract, what you pay people. It's all the other stuff that adds up to getting the most out of them and having them be a true ambassador for the business. And it's only 1 out of every 4 or 5 managers any of us will have in our lifetime that will think are good. So how can we get more people, more managers in that camp of doing the things that make them good leaders? And I tell you what, if it's people first, you better start with catching them doing things right and asking them questions, not telling them things. But in fact, people ask me I talk to first-time managers, and what should I do? I was going to go in and make it really clear. I expect them to be at work and stuff. I go, because you're promoted to the job, a lot of times people have a feeling that they've got to prove themselves, and they prove themselves by acting what their mental image of a manager was, is kick butt and take names. And no, you got to start by asking questions and interview each person that's going to work for you and ask them about their job and what they could do to do it better. Peter Drucker defines a management as getting the work done through others. It's not being a super worker and trying to do it all and catching people doing things right and taking it back and doing it for them. I knew I couldn't trust you. It's not being a micromanager. It's being there for your people. And so if you get that going, and you interview all your people, and then you prioritize and see what would really help the most, and then you go to your boss and you say, you put me in this job, you got to back me up, and we need the resources to upgrade the software. I'm telling you, you got to back me up, and then they'll do that, because you're in a honeymoon period, and wow, now all your employees go, wow, this person can make something happen. This is great, because the last 3 managers, all they cared about was politics and making sure that they took credit for your ideas, and who needs that? Here's somebody that's really on our side. Game over. You're going to be on a whole new path. They're going to want to, and then they're going to be bending over themselves, paying you back on because you've helped them and you've helped them their careers. Yes, I'm available this weekend to work. Yes, I'm glad to. They're anxious to pay you back because of the relationship that they have with you personally. So that's what I see works, and that's what I advocate about, and I help people, whether it's an individual manager or to be part of a group. We're all doing Zoom meetings now, and then so the question is big. Well, what can you do? On Zoom, and well, have you ever done a praise barrage? What's that? Well, that's where hey, before we get started in this next meeting, I just want to go around our group, and as I name somebody, I like everyone else to say what they most value about working with that person. Let's start with Gary. Okay, how about Melody? And you take 10 minutes, you go around the group, and what have you just done? People have gotten individual positive feedback, 100% positive, by the way, from people they work with. And I guarantee you, they're going to feel like $1 million. And whatever they were recognized for, Tom's so good at drawing out the quieter people in the group. Now they're going to be great at that because what gets recognized gets repeated. And you're going to have a tighter team, a more solidarity among the team. And, try it. You'll see it works. I had, like, for the book, like the first part we talk about on the Work Made Fun Gets Done, on what you can do individually to make your work more exciting. And there's, playing games with yourself or setting your timer for 20 minutes and see if you can get the boring part of your job done quickly. I interviewed a woman. She goes, well, when I really want to connect with the work and feel meaning in what I'm doing, I put on, in 2015, Yo-Yo Ma played a 3-hour concert from memory for 8,000 people. It was Bach's six concertos for the cello, and he played 3 hours straight with like a 3 minute break in the middle. And she says, when you hear that music, you feel as God's hands are moving through him, and to hear that when I'm working, it makes my work more meaningful. That I'm doing things that are important. I got off the phone and I tried it. It was like, she's right. It was great. And it's a no cost thing. It's free on the internet, 2015 Yo-Yo Ma, And so we collected a lot of ideas like that worked for. And probably the biggest surprise I had on the whole fun thing, is that it was different for everybody. I kind of thought that's my biggest surprise in the whole project. For a couple of years, we spent researching and interviewing people that I thought, if you ask me what's fun at work, well, that's easy. It's when you're laughing, you're having fun. But if you ask my wife what's fun for work, she would say, because I've done this, and she goes, well, it's fun when you had a good day, you worked hard, you came home and you feel satisfied. Then that was fun. I go, really? That's fun. Yeah, well, I can't argue with what's fun for her. I know it's different than for me. And I found everyone had a different definition, which is really great, because now there's a richness. And let's do what's fun for you, and next week we'll do what's fun for me, and we'll all benefit from it. So I've had fun with that, and where I managed people where we'd have meetings, and I remember we did a thing where let's start our meeting with a joke. Who wants to do next week's? And then we'd go through the whole group, and some people were better than others, but they had a whole week to practice. And even if it wasn't that great a joke, we'd all laugh, and it was, and they got a little bit better at a skill that, that type of thing. So we're in it together, and what can we do? Or I had I interviewed a CEO for the book. He talked about trying to set up, a couple times a year they do a team building, a group function activity for the company, and sometimes with their families, sometimes with their spouses, and the CEO said, every time I do this, it never seems to quite work. A lot of people don't like it, and people don't come, and we're spending money, but it doesn't seem like we're getting a return on it. And finally, and they had another executive do it, same results. And then finally, he kind of dawned on the idea, why am I pushing so hard when this isn't my thing? Let me find someone that's actually good at this. And he got a millennial and asked him, would they be willing to do it? Of course, they'd love to. And they use social media tools to survey the company, and then the timing that works out best for people, which is another thing, because he'd pick timing, that worked for him as CEO. Yeah. But he didn't have kids anymore, and it's like everyone else. It was a whole hassle. And they ended up they did something, and people they loved it. The first one they did was one of these medieval shows or they had a show and they serve turkey legs, and everyone loved it. The kids loved it, families loved it. It really did what they were trying to do, was to bring everyone together and have a common joyous event. And so he had that realization that he was pushing on a rope, and he needs to back off and give someone else the chance to do it. And so it's that type of strategies. How can you get to the things that work? And even when in the downtimes when things aren't going well, it's again stopping and reviewing together. And when someone makes a mistake, it's so easy to dump on them and embarrass them in front of their peers. But when you do that, you basically are cutting them off from you and from the company. It's not a place they're going to want to work. Bill Gates, he once said, you could tell a lot about the long-term viability of any organization simply by looking at how they handle mistakes. Because if you criticize and embarrass someone in front of their peers, they're not going to make that mistake again, but they're not going to be there anymore either. And so,
well, if they are, they're not going to do anything.
Yeah, or they're going to be.
The check is good enough; they may stay and collect the check, but you've stifled their creativity. You've taken away any incentive to go above and beyond. I got to share this example. I heard because it triggered, and I can't stop. That somebody was describing different, somebody, the rulers told him he was going to be tortured, and he could pick which, what kind of torture he wanted. So, as he went down the hallway, you could hear one where it sounded like things were breaking and people are screaming. Went down another one, and then it sounded really bad. Third one was just this really calm, peaceful murmur. He thought, I'll take that one. And they opened the door, and everybody was buried up to the top of their bottom lip in manure. They're all going, "Don't make waves, don't make waves." But organizations create employees that go through their careers muttering to themselves, "Don't make waves, don't make waves," because they're afraid of what happens if,
Yeah, and if they're criticized, then they can start spending more time on covering their tracks and writing a summary email to make sure if it goes south that it's someone else's fault, and they can put more energy in that negativity, if you will, that in itself becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's sad when I see that individually or as an organization. So because it's so much powerful to leverage the positive, but yet not common, common knowledge, but not common practice. It was Voltaire that first said that in the 16th century, that common knowledge is not very common. And that's what I find I tend to, all the topics I tend to gravitate are in that camp, that they're kind of common sense, but they're not common practice. And oftentimes because they're immediately dismissed, like fun. No, people can have fun on their own time. We're paid to work, and but just back that up a little bit and look at it a little bit closer. I'm not talking about stopping everything and let's just have a constant party. I'm talking about celebrating success and catching people doing things right, and finding if they have an approach, if they have an idea, for example. In research I've done, 92% of employees want to be asked for their ideas and input. 92%. Wow. Talk about a cheap way to motivate someone. Hey, do you have any ideas on this? And then if they've got a good idea, you could slam them and say, "Oh, we tried that 2 years ago, it'll never work." Or you could say, "Well, why don't you test it out? How can I help you with your idea?" Who's gonna have more energy for the idea than the person who came up with it, right? And man, that's a simple thing, but enormously powerful if you can harness it. So I worked with a company in Connecticut, Boardroom Inc. They do newsletters and these large books, and they started a thing called iPower, where they ask employees, every employee, not employees in general, but every employee, to suggest 2 ideas each week for how we can improve things around here. How we can save money or streamline processes or better serve the customer. 2 ideas, everyone. And it took them a couple tries to get it going, but once it did, man, it was enormously powerful. Doing that one thing well led to a 5-fold increase in their revenues in a 3-year period. They had, I remember they had a kid that was worked in the shipping area, and one of his suggestions, just 1 week, he said, next time we get this big book printed, if we can cut down the paper size less than 1/16 of an inch, I think it'll fall in the next shipping rate. Will save some money in postage. And they go in there, is he right? They cut up a book. He's right. And they made that simple single change. In the first year, they saved $500,000. The CEO of the company, Marty Edelson, told me, he said, "Bob, I've worked in direct mail for 27 years. I didn't even know there was a 4th-class postal rate. But to the young kid who's staring at the postal chart day in and day out, he knew there was. If we can tap into his head as to what he sees, we can all improve as a result." And so it went. Thousands and thousands of little suggestions that made them better and better. So, for most companies, their idea of getting employee suggestions is a suggestion box in the lunchroom that's got a lock on it, for no one's ever going to open it, And if anyone hears it all, they get a form that says, "Here's why we're not using your silly idea. What gives you the right to tell us what we should do in purchasing?" And sorry, it won't happen again. And the whole thing is grinds to a halt before it even got started. So it's looking at I've had a passion for finding the simple things, the unsung topics that could really regenerate an organizational as a force using the collective power of all employees, and that's what I love doing. And I don't know, I probably have happened on a handful of them at most. That here's something, yes. So another book I did was called Ubuntu. It was about the South African principle of unity and connectedness that Nelson Mandela used to unify the nation after the fall of apartheid in 1989. And I saw this, I learned about it, and I said, this is what American business needs. And so I did a book on it, and I bring the principles into the work environment, how to build a stronger team through the principles of Ubuntu. And I love it, and it definitely, these things definitely work. They can feel like magic, but they're basic blocking and tackling around proven principles, and that's what I enjoy sharing and helping people with in my books, my speaking, and my consulting.
Well, very nice. Dr. Bob, it's been a real pleasure talking with you. Let's
Likewise.
say goodbye to the audience. So everybody that's here, if live, we're glad you were here with us today. If you're watching it on the replay, you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, or you're not following me on LinkedIn, I do this every week. I had the privilege of talking to some amazing people like Dr. Bob. So we'll say goodbye. See everybody.
Let me take one step further, that if anyone is interested in having my latest book with my compliments, Work Made Fun Gets Done, if you send me an email with your best mailing address, I'll put one in the mail to you, no cost. As a thank you to you and to your listeners. My email is bob@drbobnelson.com. My website is www.drbobnelson.com. And I have all my books actually are at discounted prices on my website. So send me an email if you'd like to get a copy of the book. And thank you, Ken, so much for your time.
Well, very nice. And what we'll do is we'll make sure that all of that stays in the show notes for all of the different places that you might be listening or seeing this, so that way you can find his contact information, find out how to get a copy of that amazing book. Again, thank you very much. We'll see everybody next week.
Happy cruising.